What's going on, everybody? My name is Nick,
And my name is Dave.
and this is the Deep Dive, and we are in week 3 of our series called Coming Home for Christmas.
Right.
And today we're talking about the joy of home.
That's correct.
Yeah. All right.
Well-
we nailed the intro. Do you have anything to add about it?
No, we'll talk through it, and it'll be fun.
All right, let's go. All right, well, we're back, and as we're getting closer to Christmas, we had a staff Christmas party last night, and it was a lot of fun. And
I was going to say, we got a lot of things that we could celebrate a little bit. Starting with, before the staff Christmas party was a Saturday night.
the Christmas Palooza.
Christmas Palooza.
Yeah.
It was an event, the first time we had done it, and it I think was a very, very good success. Started a great tradition, combining Angel Tree in a lot of our ministries, a lot of volunteers, a lot of kids came through with their families.
Yeah.
Santa was here.
Santa was here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really cool time, and there stories are kind of starting to pop up of different people's experience, and we designed the event around the idea of picking up Angel Tree, as you said, but we wanted to do something a little more special for those families, and not as like a charity case thing, but more as like just, hey, come be a part of community, enjoy part of the Christmas season. We tailored that in with some of our year-end Christmas parties that the youth and children were already doing. So we tried to make it like one big event that everybody could be a part of, and it really went off well. And
It did. It did, and those families just could come and blend in. And to me, it really defines what I think our goal of our mission and outreach should be, with being ministry with and not necessarily ministry to. Lots of times we can feel like we're handing out or doing that and doing ministry too, but doing ministry alongside and just building community. It was a beautiful event, and you were working outside the whole time, most of the time. I got to wander around and see all the different parts about it, and it was magical. It was a fine evening. It really was.
Good. Just to tell a couple of the things, me, my wife Rachel, and Katie Griggs were kind of the three that spearheaded it, and so a lot of people have kind of been reporting back stories, and one of the stories was Mary Ann was working with one of the counselors at one of the schools that we do Kids for Kids with, that we happen to get several of our Angel Tree families from, and she turned around and looked at Mary Ann and said, "You guys get it." Just the fact that they can come and blend in, as you said, and y'all are just here providing a space for them. And they're like, we wish more spaces would be like this. And so it was very complimentary, and we were
because I think most of us have had a time when we might have been a little down on our luck.
Sure.
When we needed help, and we know what it felt like.
Yeah.
And it can be embarrassing.
Yeah.
And can feel, you can sometimes feel people's shame. And we wanted to try to, as best we could, take that away.
That's right.
And I hope we did. I think we did.
I think so too.
Did good.
But it was a good weekend. Then, like I said, we had our staff Christmas party.
And that was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. It was a good time, and the pork and bacon was so good.
Oh yeah, the olive food. We had plenty of food for sure.
That's for sure.
And our gift exchange was monumental.
That's right. I got a Snoop Dogg cookbook, which I'm super excited about.
I got a naughty or nice thing that can flip.
That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, but it was good. But let's get a little bit into to this message, and I should say we are following the series title, Come Home for Christmas.
Yeah.
Obviously not original with us, not original with me.
Sure.
And so it wasn't necessarily a canned sermon series, but there were a lot of resources that kind of came along with it. But then as I did my sermons, which, they had some suggestions and stuff, but I kind of always do my own thing. And I kind of found out, like the last 2 weeks, I think I said this last week as well, that they've been a little bit mistitled for me as I got into the text. And what is this really about?
Yeah.
There is some parts about coming home, but and the joy of home. And mostly in the first text that we looked at. Each week we've done an Old Testament and a New Testament. This week it was from Zephaniah. But there's even some bad news and good news with Zephaniah. If you look at the whole book, there's only 3 chapters. It's an Old Testament prophecy, 4th book from the end of the Bible. And the first 2 chapters are pretty much kind of John the Baptist kind of material, warning Judah and Israel, of what's going to happen if they didn't change their ways.
Right.
But then it turns, and then that 3rd chapter is very hopeful. And it's got some beautiful, beautiful things in there, including about, returning home and coming home. And of course, that would have meant something to them when they were in exile because of the idea of coming home. But then we really got into it when we got into John the Baptist, and which kind of brings up a funny story, because I was talking about, like, we have these Advent texts, and a lot of them could show up on a Christmas card somewhere. I bring you great tidings of good joy that will be to all people, for unto us a child is born, and those kinds of things. The people living in darkness have seen a great light. The light has come. But John the Baptist, man, and particularly the text from this week, it is like, you brood of snakes, the axe is right there. We're about ready to take you out. You call yourself...
It's pretty hardcore.
It's hardcore. Yeah. And the thing that I laugh about every time I read that text is the very last sentence of it. It talks about how John the Baptist went on to preach the good news. I was going like, what has sounded like good news of all of that? But I had used that whole illustration about Christmas cards, and that you don't ever see any John the Baptist Christmas cards. But what I got out of it was this, because he did have this pretty old school firebrand sermon. For folks need to change their ways. And they listened to him, and they heard their news and said, what do we need to do? And so, you need to repent and be baptized. And so they did hear the good news. And so really, if I properly titled this sermon, I think it would be, sometimes you have to hear the good news and the bad news before you hear the good news.
Yeah, that's true.
And I just think about that in my own life. Sometimes my wife will say to me, I'll come home, and she'll say, do you want to hear the bad news or the good news? And I was going like, all right, here it comes. Just get to the point. And then she'll tell me, well, the contractor came over today, and this bill, there's a lot of stuff wrong, and it was going to be like $4,000. But he's got some supplies, or he knows this, and it's really only going to be about $1,200. And so now it sounds like good news.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you have to hear the bad news to put the good news in context. And I think that is with the message for us as we think about the part of the Advent message that is our preparing our hearts for, not just for Christmas, but preparing for Jesus, preparing for Jesus coming again. And so, I tried to kind of focus in on that in the sermon, and then, brought in some stuff about joy as well towards the end. But, you have experience with good news, bad news?
Well, actually, it's funny that you said that, because we had a guy come out and clean our dryer vents this past weekend. He got up in the ceiling, and he came down, and he goes, well, do you want the good news or the bad news? And I was like, just give me the bad news. And, he was telling me, he's like, look, this is kind of outdated material. Like, I can't really even get in and clean it. I can replace what you have existing, but to replace it right, it's going to cost like $4,000, kind of what you said.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I don't, it's Christmas time. I don't have that currently at the moment to drop. So can you just replace the, it's one of those like flex ones. And he goes, oh yeah, we can do that. That's no problem. And I said, well, what was the good news? He said that I found it. And I was like, come on, man.
Yeah.
So,
but back to the point of the text, is that when we think about preparing, I think sometimes we can think about, well, we're just going to live our lives and enjoy the holiday or the season or whatever it is. And it is this time of looking like there are some things I need to change in my life.
Yeah.
And, John the Baptist talked a little bit about, bearing God's fruit. And so you just look at the way, how are we going to produce fruit in our lives, the good fruit, the peace, the kindness, the goodness, and how are we going to be doing just as he talks about, like, those people that have 2 shirts should be giving one to the poor. These people that have a lot need to be given to those who don't have anything. He kind of called out a couple of groups, the tax collectors, which is a kind of typical thing to call out in the Bible, because the tax collectors were a bad group of folks that were really taking advantage of the people. They were Jewish people that had been hired by Rome to collect the taxes, and they were in a position of power, and they would take too much, because they got to whatever they could collect. They paid Rome what was due, and they could collect that. And so they were very unfair in those practices, but yet they had this sort of authority that they sort of lauded over people. So he says, what is his message to them? And what I liked about it is he didn't say, you need to stop being a tax collector. He just said, you need to be fair and just, and don't take advantage of the people. The same with the Roman soldiers. I mean, that was their job. And Roman soldiers were set there to sort of keep the eyes on the people in Israel, and they could be pretty ruthless too in some of the things that they did. And there was also a lot of consternation as they didn't think they were paid enough. And so, John says, be okay with what you're paid, and do your job, but don't beat up on people. And so, we look at, it's sometimes we look at like, well, if I follow Christ, I'm going to have to quit completely doing what I'm going to do. Yeah. No, it's not. It's just do it right and do it better. Do it in a just and fair way. So
I think that's something that we can really carry with us, because there's a lot of times I hear people will say something like, like reasons they don't get into certain places of ministry or something like that is because, I'm not good at this or that because I'm just, a doctor, or I'm just a blah, 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 like whatever the title is. And you go, no, we're not saying you come here to necessarily, or saying take your ministry to wherever you're working, like go to that spot. And how are you showing Christ in that space? And that makes it say like, okay, I recognize that I can do things in my own sphere of influence or my own circle, wherever I'm working or wherever I'm playing, and go, how can I show God in this space? How can I be a better person?
Yeah. Yeah. One other thing I need to mention, it happened only in the second service, but, we had the Christmas Palooza here Saturday night. And so balloons got loose in the church. Yeah. I don't even know if I even noticed that they got loose, but they did. The helium balloons, they went up to the ceiling. So in the sermon, if you didn't see it, if you were in the traditional service, you did. And it didn't catch it on video because they're videoing me, and I'm sorry they didn't have a wide shot.
We did a wide shot, yeah.
Yeah, but like I was actually on the other side of the stage, but I was talking about this when preparing for Christ coming again, and it was the part about like no one really knows the day or hour when Christ will return, and in this exact moment, the balloons fell down.
That's insane.
It was insane. The timing could not have been more perfect, But I'm looking at the people. I'm kind of I preach all over the place, and I'm kind of focused for that minute right there on that section, and people started laughing. I was going like, what?
Yeah, you're getting like a serious moment. You're like, everybody's going to start.
I know I said some things that were supposed to be funny in the service, but this wasn't one of them. It's like, hey, Jesus is returning. That's hysterical. But it could not have been. But it really gave me a point. I was like, you put those balloons on. You don't know when the balloons are going to drop.
Right.
We also don't know when Christ will return. But we need to live our lives every day, And here's the thing about it. This is why it's good news.
Yeah.
And that's why it's joyful news. Because we find out that our lives are going to be better and richer and fuller, and we're going to live life, in the way that it was intended.
Yeah.
And then that's when we really see what sounded like bad news might have just been hard news, but once we begin responding to it, we find out that it is very, very good news in preparing our hearts and our lives, to be more like Jesus.
Yeah, I think there's always that moment when something bad happens or something that like we need to turn and we kind of look at it and we go, okay, this is here. It's not great. Maybe I've gotten to a space in my life that I'm doing too much or whatever. But then you kind of make that self-reflection and go, I need change, or I need something to help me. And the beautiful thing about Christ is like, he's like, I've come to be that change for you. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
here's your way forward. You know what I mean? And I've got it laid out for you. It's just, I mean, through his ministry, he laid it out for us. But,
Sure.
You know.
Yeah. And then the other, I think building off of that was another kind of story I told to illustrate. I talked the week before about this building company, house construction company in Nashville called Kingdom Builders, which I think is an interesting name, and we can borrow that name, which is really kind of our name because we need to all be Kingdom Builders.
Yeah.
But following in line with the idea of building was a story that I heard about this guy was a philanthropist, a very wealthy person, and so he contracted with this guy to build his house. And he wanted this house, and he wanted to like spare no expense and make it just immaculate, all the latest stuff, all the best materials. Then he said, and here's the deal, you said this is what it's going to cost. Whatever you can say below that, you can keep. And so the guy cut corners a lot.
Right.
He was going to say, okay,
Maybe extra money.
Here's a chance this is going to be a windfall for me. And so he didn't use the best materials, and he didn't get all the inspections done, and he didn't all that. And even though it looked on the outside like a beautiful house, it really was very poor construction.
By the way, this story gave me PTSD back to my renovation days.
That went on forever.
Forever.
Yeah. But then he gets to the end, this guy's a philanthropist, and he says, well, here, you built this fine house out of these best materials, and I wanted you to do that because I am giving the house to you. Here's the keys to the house. And so the guy's just going like,
oh, man. Because he knew what he did.
Yeah, because he knew what he did. And so, like, when we're building a kingdom of God, sometimes, I think we can cut corners. We can take the easy way. We cannot pass the inspections that we should have. Yeah. And we're basically building the kingdom for us, our life, our world, our community. And so when we cut corners there, when we fail to do the things that we shouldn't, then this is the place, this earth in which we live.
Yeah.
When we don't follow the master planner's way of building and constructing our communities and our life. So I liked that illustration. I don't know if it came off great, but it made a point for me because I know that lots of times, it's not going the full way. It's either just like it may look like something superficially on the outside that looks pretty good and spiritual and all that stuff, but if you really start the close inspection, you find out there's been some shortcuts taken and all that. So
and I think. Sometimes the church universal has a problem in that space where you kind of do it almost more for the visual than you do for the ministry value. Like of what you can and what you can make happen versus creating authentic spaces for worship or creating authentic spaces to experience God and get to know your faith. I'm not necessarily saying us. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, I think it's all churches to various levels, and it is. But really, what is a beautiful church? Mm-hmm. And certainly, I love beautiful churches. We have I love our sanctuary. I mean, it's beautiful. But what is a beautiful church? A beautiful church is people that are that are loving their neighbors as they love themselves, that are reaching out to the least, the last, and the lost. Yeah. I mean, and it's the people within it that make a beautiful church. Sometimes we look at sort of the exterior and don't get into what is it really that is the actually lifeblood of.
Well, I can give an example of that even in. Now this does involves a mega church out in Kansas. I went to Adam Hamilton's church one time, Church of the Resurrection. They were doing a thing called the Leadership Institute. Mm-hmm. I got to go, and the campus is beautiful.
Oh, gosh,
of course.
Yeah.
I mean the sanctuary. They built a big sanctuary, and it's got stained glass. It's got the pit for the bands and all. It's got everything you would want, right? But I tell you, the thing I remember most are how hospitable the congregants were, the stories that they were telling of like the ministry they were doing. You know, like, yeah, I saw the room and I saw the building and stuff like that, but it was never about that, to your point of like, what is a good church? And I think it's the ministry that's being inspired within the people to go and do it, and how you feel kind of coming in. And I think it goes a little bit with a study we did that when people are looking at churches, they're looking for those warm encounters. They want a personal touch more than they care about how much wood's in the sanctuary.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right, and so, yeah, they want a place to come home to.
Yeah.
You know, and so, yeah, it can be nice and it can be beautiful because we have nice, beautiful houses.
Yeah.
But it can be on the exterior look like this beautiful house, but it really hasn't become a home.
Right.
And I think that's what you're describing in Church of Resurrection. And I feel at home here.
Yeah.
I feel like, we have a beautiful sanctuary. We work in our facilities, but we're blessed in a lot of ways with the material things that we have.
Sure.
But really, what makes it home are the people here,
Yeah.
and the love that they have, and the relationships that we share.
Yeah. What was beautiful is during the Palooza, walking into the kitchen and watching 10 people doing 10 different things, but all working together.
Yeah. And this is a great example there. We just had lunch with Steve, who's on staff.
Yeah.
He was talking about he had just met a new couple there, and we both knew them already, but they're a new couple. They just joined the church.
Yeah.
But you're talking about what great people they are. But that's sort of like kind of doing a home thing, cooking together, and that's what really those relationships in our families are, but in our church family as well. When you're sort of working side by side with people,
Absolutely.
it becomes home. Right?
I think that's the beautiful illustration, and I think when we can work together, bigger things are going to happen. And I think that's what Christ wanted to come down and do with us. He wanted to inspire us to be in ministry, because I forgot exactly where, but Jesus does look at the disciples and go, "You will do even greater things." It's this camaraderie here, and you take it forward. And I think that's something we all remember or need to remember.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I want to take time for us to talk a little bit about next week.
Yeah.
Because this is going to be our last podcast of the year. We started back, I think, after the first Sunday. I don't remember what the date was. We'll have it next week. We'll look back and celebrate, how far we've come. I don't know which episode we were on, but it's got to be in over 40 now.
40s, 50s,
40s,
yeah.
I'm not at 50 yet, because it's not 52 weeks.
Yeah.
We haven't been 52 weeks yet, but we're probably getting close to 50. But we want to celebrate that a little bit and look back a little bit, but then we also want to expand it to talk about Christmas in general as we continue in this series of Coming Home for Christmas. And so, and some of y'all have given us some stories and some ideas, but we'd love to hear from more folks about what your Christmas traditions are, what your memories of Christmas are, what makes Christmas home for you. And so just continue to either, pull us aside if you see us at church, or probably better yet, for our memories.
Yeah.
We'll forget.
Because we'll have your memory be, somebody else's memory and be like,
Yeah, but anyway, text us or send us an email to either one of our church emails, or the easiest thing probably is the deep dive at hickoryflat.org. Email or .church. You can use either one of those things. Not to make it more confusing. Anything else we need to talk about like we got one thing I do want to have people be mindful of is the longest night service. It's coming up on December 21st. Because one thing, as we tried to be celebrated this Christmas and do some fun things like the Palooza, and then this Sunday is the Christmas concert, is to realize that there's some people that are having a really hard time. Some people in our very church that are going through a really hard time. Some people who've lost their loved ones. We celebrate the first Christmas without them. We've got several people that are facing some surgery, are going through some cancer treatments. A lot of things going on, and just to create a safe space for them to come and to voice that, and to be able to experience God, Emmanuel, that is with us. And so, the invitation is really twofold. One is, for people who may be hearing this that need to be there to come. If you've got some friends who need to be there and you can help them come be with them, help them come. I hope it's a healing and hopeful event. And also, even if you don't know anybody, just to come and be the church and sit alongside the folks and say, look, we love you, we care you, and love on them a little bit. And so that's gonna be a beautiful evening.
Absolutely. And just because we can't communicate enough, like Dave said, Sunday there's only one service at 10 o'clock. We're all coming together for a Christmas worship concert. So that's going to be in place of our normal service routine, and that's only one service at 10. Then we get the
it will be a worship service. I've seen all the plans for it. It is going to definitely be a worship service. There is no sermon. There's a sermon and song.
Right.
We'll be hearing the songs of the season. A lot of different kinds of groups, from the children to the worship band to the choir to some soloists. It's going to be very inspirational.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
And then Christmas Eve, we have 2 services at 5 and 7.
Right.
So come on out. The first one's more of a family friendly kind of. They're both kind of mixture of music. So some more of your family friendly kind of get home, get Santa going.
Yeah, no, everybody's welcome and will feel comfortable, whichever. The first one may skew a little bit more modern worship. The second one will probably skew a little more traditional worship, but there's going to be something for everybody in both of them.
Yeah.
And they're both pretty traditional because, Christmas Eve is really about the tradition. We'll be lighting the candles at the end of the service and singing Silent Night, which is a wonderful moment.
Yep.
So, we got that to look forward to. And then Christmas Day, I should say. And it's funny, I've been working on that sermon, but Christmas Day is going to be online only. We're going to be pre-recording some stuff, including I'm going to be pre-recording my sermon. It's more like, what do you say on Christmas morning? And
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. I'm not going to really try to re-explain the Christmas story, but I do want to celebrate that. It'll be a short message, and we'll be featuring some of the musical highlights of all of this Advent time. So that'll be happening, and I guess one more thing to tag on it is then January 1st.
Yeah, the New Year's.
And what's that?
We'll be doing one service in person and stream, so that service will be at 10 o'clock.
Right.
It'll also be streamed online, so if you want to come be in person on New Year's Day, you can. If it's a day that you'd rather be at home and hanging out, there's opportunities for both of those as well.
I will say that I started this tradition last year here. I've done it in other churches of giving out what we call stars for Epiphany, and so I'll be giving those stars like I did last year on the first Sunday of the year.
Yep.
And so I know there's probably going to be a lot of people out because it is New Year's. Trust me, we'll have plenty and get them out of the office or get them at a later date.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people have come back with stories to me about what those stars meant. So that's coming. So a lot's happening here.
Lots happening.
Busy time.
Closing down for a little bit, but it'll be good. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Dave, is there anything else you need to add?
I'm good.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. As always, we've done this, like Dave said, 40 plus weeks, and you guys have been here 150 views a week or so. So we thank you for giving us your time, and we hope, if nothing else, that you have a great Christmas season. And we hope we see you around somewhere at some point. And or just remember, shoot us your messages, shoot us your Christmas traditions, and we'll see you next time.
God bless.